Hello and welcome to this video on the socialist view of class. Now, a social class can be defined as a group of people who share common economic interests. So for Marxists, one's class position is determined by one's relationship to the means of production. The aristocracy are the owners of land, whose income comes from rent. The bourgeoisie are the owners of capital, that's factories and so on, whose income comes from profit. And the proletariat own nothing, or more precisely, nothing except their capacity to work, and their income comes from wages. So these differences give rise to distinct class interests in each case, with the proletariat having an interest in keeping wages high, for example, whilst the bourgeoisie has an interest in keeping them low because that gives them higher profits. Class is very important for socialists for three main reasons. Firstly, socialists view class as an important analytical tool, as it forms the basis of how they understand and explain the world, as you've already seen in my first lecture on Marxism. Because they're based on shared economic interests, classes form meaningful and distinct political entities and are viewed by Marxists as the principal actors in history. As Marx said, quote, "All hitherto existing history is the history of class struggle." And by this he meant that all historical development is driven by the conflict between different classes, acting against one another in accordance with their economic interests. Thus, all historical and political developments are viewed by socialists, or at least by Marxists, as reflecting the underlying economic interests of the classes involved. So any event, whether historical or contemporary, will typically be viewed by socialists, and particularly by Marxists, as expressions of class struggle. So this is the first reason why class is so important for socialists, as it provides the analytical tool for interpreting the world. It's the lens, if you like, or the prism through which they view politics. Secondly, social class is important to socialists as they are motivated by a particular concern for the working class, the proletariat. And this is for two reasons. Partly this is because the working class, the proletariat, are the most oppressed and exploited class under capitalism, and therefore deserving of sympathy. But it's also because socialists see the working class as the class which will bring about socialism, whether through socialist revolution for Marxists or through the election of a socialist government for Social Democrats. Social class is therefore important because the working class in particular are seen by socialists as the agents of the change they wish to see, the creation of a socialist system. It's only through the conscious action of the working class that socialism can be achieved. There are, however, differences amongst socialists on the question of class. Marxists see capitalist society as leading inexorably towards ever-increasing class polarisation and class conflict. This will, they believe, ultimately lead to the overthrow of capitalism by the working class altogether. And this, in turn, will lead to a classless society because the achievement of equality will ultimately end class divisions altogether. Thus, class is seen by Marxists as a temporary phenomenon, something which should and will ultimately be abolished. Social Democrats, however, such as Anthony Crossland, do not believe in the inevitability of class struggle. Rather, they believe in the possibility of class harmony through the amelioration rather than the abolition of class differences, achieved, for example, by, pause the video here and remind yourself what kind of policies Social Democrats advocate to reduce class inequality. Okay, so it's things like Keynesian economic management, promoting full employment, investing in jobs and industry, and redistributing wealth with taxes on the rich and generous welfare provisions for the poor. Now, by the time Crossland was writing in the 1950s, capitalist society was more complex than in Marx's time, a century earlier, and appeared to be both more resilient and more capable of raising working class living standards than Marx had envisaged. Thus, post-war social democrats like Crossland revised the Marxist ideas of inevitable class conflict and believed that the amelioration of class differences was both possible and desirable. Third-way socialists revised these ideas further, suggesting that even the amelioration of income differentials between classes is not a necessary aim for socialists, but rather they should focus on achieving equality of opportunity by, for example, investment in education. In conclusion, class is significant for socialists for three main reasons. Firstly, it's a key analytical tool used by socialists, and especially Marxists, to interpret history, politics, and social change. Secondly, there's a particular sympathy for the working class as the most oppressed and exploited class in capitalist society. And finally, there is a focus on the working class as the agents of socialism, the only class with the power to make the changes socialists view as necessary, whether through proletarian revolution, as advocated by Marxists, or through elections, as supported by Fabians such as Sidney and Beatrice Webb. But there are, as I said, differences between Marxists and Social Democrats on the issue of class, with Marxists arguing that increasing class polarisation and inequality is inevitable under capitalism, while Social Democrats believe these differences can be reduced and ameliorated by an elected socialist government. Third way socialists go further and suggest that growing material inequality between classes is not necessarily a problem so long as the living standards of the poorest are improving and the state ensures meaningful equality of opportunity.